Okay, here we go. Welcome back to the SmokeScreen podcast. Shit. What is this, number 8?
I'm thinking number 8.
I think we're on number 8. Sorry, guys. We just opened it up with just like we are. James, we were joking about someone, maybe, I don't know. Anyway.
Oh, shit.
Welcome back. Let me say, I think we just agreed we're back on schedule. So every Tuesday we'll record. Every Wednesday
we'll drop
the new podcast.
Drop.
Yeah, we're doing all these old impressions. You may hear a few old impressions come out during this podcast. Just a fair warning. Anyway. So last week or the week before, we were talking about what to talk about when we got back from our little staycation. Basically, it's what this been for us, or for me anyway. And I had watched a documentary on James Randi. And I think you said you had saw it and loved it. And
yes.
For those that don't know, James Randi is an old school. He was a really popular a magician who was really compared to Houdini a lot back in his younger days.
Yeah, he was that caliber.
So if you're into magic at all, I used to be into magic, so that's why I like this kind of stuff anyway. But this goes beyond just like magic. So we're not just talking about magicians and shit. We're talking about James Randi specifically and what he did once he kind of semi-retired. So basically, once he got to middle age, he got to old to be folded up into things because he did a lot of escapes.
That's a good way to put it.
You know what I mean? So
yeah.
He started busting what he refers to as these psychic frauds.
Yeah,
and
charlatans. And
charlatans.
He uses that word a lot.
Exactly. So the idea is there's almost a code in as a magician, and you learn this when you start reading books on magic and all this stuff. You're giving the audience or people you're performing for permission. They're giving you permission to lie. Because
yes.
It's entertainment, but you don't claim anything that supernatural.
Right.
Is what I'm saying. So they
like
know
everybody's in on the gimmick.
Everybody's in
like
on
wrestling kind of.
Exactly. That's a good way to put it. So yeah, you go see a magic show. You know what you're there for. You know that they're cheating you, they're swindling you, but not in any kind of way. You're paying for entertainment. You know it's a trick. But when somebody says, I have magic powers, I have psychic powers, and this is some power doing this or bending this spoon, and we'll get into that, I'm sure.
Yeah.
Then that is now crossed the line beyond being a magician. You are now claiming the supernatural.
Yeah.
And essentially his whole thing was how he got into it was he sees it as taking advantage of people, ripping them off not only monetarily, but a lot of people grieving because it goes into these church charlatans who heal people in God's name.
Yep.
And people who do psychic readings and talk to people's loved ones who have passed and whatever. And his whole thing was it's all bullshit. It's all done with trickery. I can do the same things with the skill I've acquired in magic. And he went on a whole quest throughout the rest of his life up until even now. I think he's really old now, 90s?
Yeah.
I believe. To bust these people and made a whole entire career out of it. So you can see all these videos on YouTube of him busting people.
Yeah, so it was like he's saying, you don't break that unspoken pact between you and the audience that, we both know there's something going on here.
Right.
Trick me if you can.
Yes.
But I know it's a trick.
Exactly. And you're not claiming otherwise.
Yeah.
You're not claiming to otherwise.
And these people are, stating that this is entirely a magic trick and things like that. And I used to watch shows like that one medium
John Edward.
Well, I was thinking of that blonde chick who has long fingernails.
Yes.
New York or New Jersey, whatever.
I think he went after her too. I can't remember her name.
Like she would approach people in a grocery store and say,
Yes.
I'm sorry to bother you, but I just kind of feel like I need to tell you this kind of thing. And it does pull you in. You want to think, okay, there's something there. Nobody would just randomly do that to somebody.
Right, yes.
But there's an angle being worked all the time, I think.
Exactly. And I'll say about because I said John Edward because he's one of the more modern, so-called mediums. And my mother actually watched him a lot and wanted to have a reading with him, and you couldn't you couldn't get one. They were so backed up for like years, like waiting lists and shit, I guess. I'm not sure how long, but I know it was a long time. And I told her, I said, no, that's all bullshit, Mom. It's cold reading. And, there's techniques to that. There's mentalists that do this in magic and stuff. And, but you want to believe so bad because you have that loved one, or anybody in your family. And, in my case, it was my stepdad and stuff like that. And she had a couple of experiences she attributed to him and wanted to believe so bad. And I'm glad she never did, because I think ultimately it just, I don't know. It's like, and again, he
false
started,
hope. False hope.
Yeah, false hope, and it's almost like reopening an old wound that you've already processed or something.
Yeah, you're right.
You know what I'm saying? Like you go through a grief process and then you learn to accept it. You never forget loved ones and all that, but you understand it's part of nature. You get to that point, you know what I mean? But then it's like reopened, like they're still there, and you can still, have a conversation with them or something.
Yeah.
So anyway, it started with him, James Randi specifically. Started with people who just did more tricks, like Uri Geller was the big one. He bent the spoons. He's the famous spoon bending guy. But then he got really into because that was more of Uri wasn't really hurting anybody in the sense of taking their money. He was just going on shows saying, I have magic powers, I can bend metal. And he didn't go that next step and say, I can talk to your loved one, you know what I mean? Or I can heal your cancer. Don't go to the hospital, by the way. It's gone. The devil, it was all the devil. So that's when he got into those type of things.
Yeah, and Uri Geller, he would like rub a little spot on the spoon, and all of a sudden it looked like it was just melting, and it would just bend over and fall over.
Yeah, and break in half.
And on that documentary, you see James Randi doing it. He can do it just exactly like him.
And so with Uri Geller specifically, he started following his career and kind of got on this train, so to speak, of wanting to bust these people because he knew it was bullshit, being a longtime magician. He actually ended up writing a book on him, but how he busted him was Johnny Carson's show. So the old Johnny Carson show, Johnny Carson was actually an amateur magician, and I had known that just from my days in magic, but he had Uri Geller on, and he called him and said, let me tell you how to test him, you know what I mean, with his magic powers, because he is telling Johnny Carson, I guess when he booked the show,
yeah,
I have special skill. I'm a psychic or whatever it is. He said I can bend metal and shit. So he basically laid down some basic ground rules to test him. Don't let him bring his own shit. You use your stuff. Don't let them people near it.
Yeah,
all that stuff. And he goes on Johnny Carson Live, and of course he's not powerful enough that night.
Right.
And they have to cut the commercial break and shit, and he couldn't do anything because he did a couple things. He had the spoon bending was the main thing. Or just bending keys, stuff like that. He did that on Barbara Walters, as a matter of fact, too. And then James Randi followed him up and basically followed him around and did the shows the week after he did them.
Yes.
And showed how it was done. But he also did something where he would have like 7 or 8 metal cups and have water in one of them. He could, hold his hand over it.
Yeah.
And tell which one the water was in. And the way he stopped that was he told him to simply put some felt or something on the bottom of each cup, and they couldn't slide because he would basically tilt the tray and see which one reacted differently with water in it. So he couldn't do any of that, of course, all of a sudden, but he still never relinquished the idea that he had actual magic powers. He still went around to all the shows, and it started a war, but it never really knocked him off the block. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
it's crazy.
It is crazy, especially once people are exposed to him getting busted.
Yes.
How do you
think he's going away forever?
Yeah. How does they still have stock in this guy? I don't understand that part of it. And I saw on there that documentary he had the other guy on the other TV show where he was in like a karate gi or something like that.
Yeah, this was the Price is Right dude. Bob Barker was hosting
Barker,
it.
yes,
I
that's
believe.
right. Yes, right. And he said he could move pages in a phone book and make a pencil move and all this stuff. And Randi came on there and like the guy went out there and demonstrated it, and it worked perfectly.
Yeah, it worked. He moved the pencil and the page.
Randy's like, let me put a control here.
Yeah,
and
right.
He can't do it. And he couldn't.
Yeah, so he
had
had put a pencil on the edge of a table, And, he moved it, and then he put the phone book out, and he moved the page, made a page flip, and then he comes out and does the same thing with the pencil, showing its heat convection on the edge of a table. Anyway.
And you get it balanced just right where it'll move.
Right,
yeah.
Exactly. And then the phone book, he had laid out a bunch of, what was it, foam?
Little styrofoam
pieces of styrofoam. And, he had already said, I think he's simply blowing on it.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden, he couldn't do it either.
That's right.
So
imagine that.
And then to go beyond that, of course, he starts going after psychics and all this other stuff, and has all these different TV shows he was on, busting people, and then it started at $10,000, then it went to $100,000. Now to this day, it's still $1 million. You can go, and if you prove him wrong under a scientific setting, you will win $1 million.
Right.
And nobody's ever taken any of it, any of those, whether it's 10, 100, or a million.
And I want to tell you, this is a weird thing. I told you I'd watched some of those challenges.
Yes.
And one of them is he doesn't believe in people being able to use like a divining rod to find water.
Yes.
And, dude, I've seen people on there saying they've never been wrong. They'll have like the two things in their hands, and when they cross, there's water. Well, dude, I've watched people in the field do that when, working with underground cable, and I've seen it work. They'll do it. They'll cross. They'll say there's water right here, and bingo, bango, you dig down, there's water there.
And that's a big thing in gold prospecting.
Yeah, and Randy says there's no way that works, but people have gone on there to try to get the million, and it doesn't ever work in his scientific control, and I don't know what his control is, but I've seen it work with my own eyes.
Well, that I've always questioned that too, because that was a big thing in gold panning, and we used to watch Gold Rush and all that, because I used to gold prospect and all that, and that was a big thing. And even on those shows, I remember the Alaskan gold. What was the show? Not the one where they mostly did dredging in the ocean.
Oh, yes.
The second one that got popular. Not Gold Rush, but Bering Sea Gold.
Bering Sea Gold, thank you.
So, yeah, the dad of the guy who had the big old dredge, with the backhoe and everything, he went out there when they did when he was trying to do an inland mine and used dowsing rods. And the son always made fun of him, calling it bullshit. And I've always thought it was too, because, dig here, there's water or there's something, but if you dug 10 feet away, would there be water too? I don't know. I don't know. But I've seen people attempt it or whatever, but I've always been skeptical.
This is a clear description of what I've seen for anybody listening. When you get like an electric fence for a dog, an invisible fence, and they come with those little flags you stick in the ground, or if you have utilities located and they might put flags in the ground.
Right, yeah, the little orange flags.
Yeah, so I have literally seen people snatch a couple of those flags out of the ground, rip the flags off, bend them, put them in their hands, and use those, and they work. And it's like some people are just, they've done it so much and they're so good at it. But again, I'd like to know exactly how Randy shuts them down, because I feel like I could get those people to go in there and do it, but surely there's people who've tried who are way better than the people I've witnessed.
Right.
And they're probably frustrated they can't do it.
And that's the other thing too, speaking of the scientific stuff and the controls, is he would go like crazy about this shit, right? He would create like his boyfriend, I believe, when he was younger, when they first met, he created a persona.
That part, yeah.
He created a persona about being this. He was a 10,000-year-old spirit, and that had taken over this young man's body and whatever. And he went around on tour and created this whole thing. They knew they were doing it. They were setting it up so they could show the world that these people are fake. And that's how far he would go with this shit. So he's done that a couple times, and he did that with more spoon benders.
Right.
So he had a couple guys that were good magicians, and they learned all the spoon bending stuff and telekinesis, tricks and all that. And the government was studying these people, and he set these people up as real psychics or whatever you want to call it. And they fooled the scientists, and Randy was working both sides. Like he would send them the rules, to try to prevent them from succeeding, but they would and they would make them break the rules in some way.
That is really.
They would
cool.
make the scientists cave to the rules in some way, so they were still able to do it. So they even beat scientists out, and they concluded in their little study that it was real.
That is so cool.
And then they came out, of course, and said, it was all bullshit. This is how we do it.
This is how we did it.
Exactly.
Right in your face. Right under your nose.
It's just insane.
He's a smart man.
Oh, yeah, no doubt.
He really is.
No doubt.
When you hear him talk, and you brought up the medium, what was his name?
John Edward.
Did you see? I've seen an interview with him talking to him, and John Edward's getting mad, boy.
Yeah, I saw one with him because he's fairly new to the game he's old now, but
it was him and another guy on the same show.
Yeah, the other guy
via
was
satellite or something.
The other guy was getting more mad. I don't think John Edward, in that one I saw at least, said much of anything. He's like, you're entitled to your opinion or whatever, but the other guy was mad as hell.
Yeah.
But I remember watching those shows with John Edward, but then what they don't show you is all the fails, because there's lots of those.
Randy brought up in that,
yes,
because that guy kept focusing on how many they got right, and he was like, "Yeah, but you're not telling them
that you said this 63 different names until you hit one."
Yes,
exactly, because he would actually count. He'd watch these whole shows. He would count the number of names they threw out there and whatever, and he would have these stats when he'd come up on the show next.
All right,
it'd be like, do you remember do you remember how many names you named? He was like, probably 6 or 7. You named 46, sir.
Before you hit the right one.
Before you hit the right one. So yeah, that's just typical cold reading.
And when
stuff.
you're in a room with this full of people who want to believe,
oh yes,
they're not going to hear those other 59 or 60 names.
That's the key. It's not mass delusion, but it's almost a placebo type thing where
it really is.
It's if you're going there, the audience is going there to see something that they already think's a legit.
Yep.
You already won. You already won the game.
You have.
That's all there is to it.
And it's the same with the preachers, the televangelists.
Yes.
They're in a room with sick people, some terminally. They want to believe anything at this point. You're halfway
they're
there,
desperate.
bud.
Their family's desperate, yes.
And you get all that adrenaline pumping, somebody might be able to step out of a wheelchair for a second.
Exactly. And that was the other big thing he was known for was, speaking of the televangelical stuff, is, what was his name? You knew his name.
Popoff. Peter Popoff.
Yes. So he's like the guy who was healing people, and he'd call out random names, and you knew their addresses and all this shit, and exactly what was wrong with them, what their ailment was. And it
turns out, they had these cards when you come in that tell us a little bit about yourself. And
they would mail it, or I think they would mail them though, so it wasn't like the same day. But they might have done them both.
Yeah, and these people Randy, he sets up this little thing where he has people go in there, and he tells them, "Hey, when people come up and approach you, pay attention to what they're talking to you about. They might seem like there are other people in the crowd too, but they're getting info from you."
Right.
Meanwhile, he's got this undercover security guard out back trying to pick up any radio frequencies or whatever, and he does. In the middle of the thing, Popoff comes out there, and all of a sudden you come across this radio, "Hey, Petey, can you hear me? If not, you're in big trouble." And she was right in his ear. He had an earpiece in that nobody could see. And she was feeding him information off these cards. So now all of a sudden he goes, "There's somebody here named so-and-so that has this," and said, "Stand up." And he would tell them their address and everything.
All these real specific details. They had literally just filled out a card in the mail, or either when they came in.
Yeah.
And his wife's up in a booth just reading off cards, random people. And he goes to them, and then he smacks them in the head. They fall down, and you had people getting up out of chairs, and people, their cancer was cured instantly and all this stuff. And so that guy, after he revealed all this and recorded it, and you could hear the wife, they filed for bankruptcy. So they got him. But then a few years later, he was back.
Doing the same thing.
With the same thing, and then they moved on to TV when that became a thing where they were selling prayer cloths or miracle water or something he had blessed or whatever. Yep. And was still racking up millions. So it's crazy that at least he's made people aware, and I think a lot of more people are skeptical, but these people still got by with it. And we were saying before we started, surprised maybe I'm surprised there are not a lot more personal lawsuits against these people, because you could have a person there that never goes to the hospital, that believes that once they leave that place, oh shit, I'll walk for a minute. You know, my cancer's cured and my bone cancer's cured.
Yeah. And
then 2 weeks later they're gone, or I don't know, relapsed or whatever. I don't know how they would tell themselves what they'd tell themselves.
And it's been shown, I mean, that people in this like heightened sense, of euphoria can do things.
Yes, it's
like,
crazy.
If you're normally at your house in your wheelchair and you're all depressed and everything, you may not even be able to do anything, pick up your own drink and drink. But when you get into a place like that where you get this false hope and the huge crowd cheering you on and all this stuff,
right.
There's this euphoria that takes over, and I think you can do things that are pretty crazy for you. But then
no
you're
doubt.
gonna pay for it later, probably.
Exactly. So yeah, it was
dangerous, and I see Randy going after him. It's good that somebody's out there fighting that fight.
Yeah, so it was and I'd seen this stuff years ago, but it was one of these YouTube rabbit holes where I was on to documentaries about something, and I came across and saw, oh shit, I remember that guy. And then there was this documentary, and I didn't know it, because there's all these YouTube videos of these separate things.
That's right.
But this
just kind of puts it all together.
All one thing, one actually professionally produced documentary with him and his personal friends and family and everything, and then the people he busted and all that stuff. Even Uri Geller was in it. I mean, he was in it, being interviewed as well. And at least at the end of that interview, he had still not come clean. But now it does say entertainer.
That's good.
So he said since then on many occasions, I just do it for entertainment purposes. I'm not out here hurting people. But he still never really said, okay, it's bullshit. It's just a trick. I just use my own stuff. I work the spoon before you even see the spoon. And then all it takes is a little bit of pressure, and boom, it's just broke.
Well, let me play devil's advocate for you here. Do you think, like, is there any part of you that thinks there's a place for a faith healer or something, because you don't want to steal all the hope out of somebody who's terminally ill? You know what I mean? I know it's shitty, and I know if you take money, that part's shitty, but a little bit of joy in their life, or just a little bit in hope, even if it's
I tell you what,
hope, is there not a place for something like that?
I can see that angle, but I don't know. I don't know if that little bit of hope is worth.
And taking their money is the shitty part.
Yeah.
That's the part that
that
bothers me.
Yeah. I can't put those two together.
Me either. But if it wasn't for that,
I will say this: I was watching something. Maybe me and you were watching something a couple months ago. Some documentary. Yeah, it was. It was the Netflix show about the terminally ill people.
Oh my God, I forgot about that.
And the doctor said people need to use the placebo effect more often.
Yes.
So it was one of the girls who had the probably one of the mold things, right?
Right.
And
mold sensitivity
or something, or one of those one of the girls on the show, Afflicted.
God,
Yeah,
everybody watch that.
Please watch that if you hadn't seen it. That's it's very interesting. And then of course they said that Netflix made it look like they were crazy and they cut out all this stuff, and they said no, we didn't. And it was this whole big legal thing going on after, like every Netflix documentary, somebody sues Netflix every time. But
good recall though, that you can pull that part you're getting ready to tell.
Yeah, so this doctor it was the girl who, I can't remember, she had a bunch of little things. It wasn't one big major thing. It's a bunch of little afflictions that added up, and she could name like she could read them off a list like out of her head. But the doctor told her that she had improved on all this stuff. All these numbers and blood work and all this stuff had improved, and it looks like she's getting there. She's better. And she felt better. And then magically those things disappeared after a couple months.
That's so right.
And then he came up on the camera in private, of course, later as part of the documentary, which I guess they had to sign away their rights for privacy, right? Because he's a doctor, because they agreed to be on the documentary, and said, I just told her that, because doctors don't use the placebo effect enough. It's actually a real powerful thing. And I agree with that.
It is very powerful.
As long as it's to a degree, it's some kind of controllable thing where you're not giving people, again, false hope.
Yeah.
But to some degree, yeah.
Like you don't want to literally tell somebody their cancer's gone.
Right, exactly.
But something like that, yeah. Oh, dude, this test looks like you're getting better.
Right.
And then they start feeling better.
Right, because it unlocks something in your mind, and they may actually get better from that in a way. And again, I'm not saying directly lying. You know what I'm saying? It is kind of, I guess, in a way, underhanded.
Yeah.
But if it's treating somebody properly, is what I'm saying.
It is. That's cool that you remember that. And a lot of those, remember, it started looking like they came back down to Lyme disease or something.
Yes, there's a lot that end up being quote unquote Lyme disease.
Yeah,
because you can't really.
There were radio frequency sensitivities.
Yeah, there was a lot of weird things.
Yeah,
and and again, this show is not to knock people who have weird, uncommon issues. I'm sure there's some legit, but these were not. I'm sorry.
Yeah,
because
a lot of these were. Oh, this one lady was like a gold digger almost. Remember?
Yes.
And she was going to all these spa treatments and stuff that were costing this guy that she
from
was
an
with
ex
tons of money.
Yeah, from an ex.
Wow.
It was her ex-husband, or actually they were still married but separated. Mm-hmm. He was paying for all this, and she didn't love him anymore, but he paid for all this shit.
Oh yeah, that one
got her a special apartment.
She was allergic to him.
Allergic to him and his clothes. So he would have
and
to.
He fell for that.
He would come by and have to change his clothes before he came into the apartment. Bring things in a paper bag.
Yes,
there's all kinds of crazy little shit that these people get in their heads.
Crazy. And he loved her to death. It was pitiful. I mean, she was breaking him down. And she had like an air mattress for him or something. I can't remember all the stuff.
Yeah.
No sheets.
Yeah, she couldn't touch fabric and all this stuff. But she was one that may have been the one that the doctor told. That may have been her, because it was all kinds of minor things, except for like she was allergic. When it started, she was allergic to everything in the world.
Yeah.
So like she lived in an apartment with nothing on the walls, no carpet, plastic over everything. Somehow
couldn't use the electricity.
Yeah,
because of the frequency, the
and
EMF or whatever.
Right, there was a different lady with that too, but yes, I believe so. So
they do all run together a little bit because
they do.
The symptoms are so similar.
Right, and that's why Lyme disease, I believe, is one of the most common in these scenarios because you can't really diagnose it.
Yep.
And so it's just it's got to be Lyme disease.
It's almost like a blanket term.
It's a blanket term,
and that makes. I want to go back and watch that
now
because we were hooked on that for a while.
Yeah, and hopefully they'll do another series or season or something.
I wish they would.
Because I would like to follow up and hear, because I read all the stuff, and I will say when we watch stuff like that, I always try to look at the other side.
Yeah.
So I looked up those like current, where are they now? And
you were finding like Instagram profiles and Twitter, and you were reading comments and things they had posted and blogged, and I remember you kept giving me all this feedback.
Right, and they were all like, at least at first, I haven't checked recently, but they were mostly mad at Netflix, saying they kind of skewed it to make them look crazy when they had really had all these mental health evaluations. Because essentially what it boils down to is it's either they're physically ill with something for real and they just can't figure it out, nobody in the world, or there's something mental going on, and they don't want to admit it's a mental disorder.
Right.
And they think that means there's something bad about them. They're crazy or whatever. So they were like saying they skewed the documentary to make them look crazy and stuff. And I'm like, no, I think it was pretty fair.
Yeah, and what they don't realize is that, as much as we busted some of them's chops, we were rooting for them because it's such a drain on the people that love them.
Yes. Like the girl who moved to the desert with mold allergies.
Yeah.
She moved to a desert, living out in a van with somebody, and the dude was like he got accepted to like MIT or one of those big time somethings.
I think you're right.
And put it off for her to stay in a van in the desert, and then made arrangements for her brother to come take his place and help her out while he went to school.
Yeah.
And then her brother came out there, and the first thing they did was hose him down.
Yeah, outside.
Take your clothes off, hose him down, made him change clothes, and he didn't know what to do.
Yeah.
He took her for like weird blood treatments and shit and transfusions and all kinds of crazy, and she never got better.
No.
And by the way, these people are on about 47 different some kind of medication.
And we kept talking about that. Think of the cocktail that's producing,
Mostly supplements, but a big cocktail of
Still.
supplements.
And come on, man. At some point, you have to. I don't know. I hate and I don't really want to speak too much on this and offend people. I really don't, because it's not a laughing matter.
No.
Mental health is a very important thing, and I understand people fighting it. Nobody wants to say my mind might be slipping a little bit. I might be my own worst enemy,
Right.
But honestly, some of them, they need to just drop back and punt. And
Yes.
and,
Exactly, and that's the thing. It's like there needs to be more conversations about mental health, because there's this stigma that no, it's not my brain, I'm not crazy or whatever, because crazy is just a blanket term. We've all got mental health issues, every single one of us. So it's got this negative stigma is what it is, and they want to avoid that, so they keep coming up with, they're Googling their own shit.
Yeah,
and they find somebody who don't know what they're talking about. Oh, that sounds exactly like, okay, I got brain fog, I'm fatigued, and I piss a lot. Oh shit, it's mold allergies.
That's right.
That's exactly how
Yep.
it happens. And they get convinced themselves that it's mold.
I can't go to work, Mom and Dad. I'm moving back in with you.
Now, normal people come across some mold. Obviously, we're not talking about rare cases of black mold that kills you instantly. You sneeze, and you go on about your day.
I was rooting for that one guy. Remember, he like scored Disney. He had a chance to.
Yeah, the music composer. Yes.
Yeah, he had a chance to like work for Disney, and he could not get out of his head.
It was chronic pain for him.
Yeah, and he, bless his heart,
And
man.
ended up being Lyme disease, actually, is what they thought.
And to see him have that Skype conversation with his buddy who went on and did the Disney thing, he's like,
Yes.
I'm sorry, I can't wait forever. Disney's not going to stop. That's a huge machine. So he was telling him how successful it was and how much fun they were having. And meanwhile, he's trapped in his house with his mom and dad and just can't leave. I felt for him. We were rooting for some of these people.
Yeah, you were. I mean, there was some obvious goal, like you said, the gold digger, and she ended up, and there was another one who was all about radio frequencies, and so she couldn't be around cell phones or anything, microwaves. But then she moved out to this town. She went on a trip to check it out, at least to think about moving there permanently, where it's a no radio zone.
Yeah, no cell phone towers in this whole town.
There's no so people that have this apparent deficiency. I don't know what you want to
Go
call it.
Amish.
Yes, they move out to this area because it's known, and there's other people out there that have the same thing, and they connect and whatever. So she basically was going to leave her husband to do this.
But I do have to point out something. There was a funny scene in there where she's out there in this town meeting all these people. They're welcoming her with open arms, and this girl points out, she's like, so this microphone you're wearing is not bothering you, or something like that. Yeah. She'd been wearing it the whole documentary.
She'd been wearing it the whole documentary.
Yeah. And supposedly she had such a sensitivity to anything.
And then when she found out, oh shit, this is giving off radio, all of a sudden it was painful.
Yes. And
then she like cussed out the camera people.
Right.
Like, what do you mean? What are you talking about? You've been wearing it the whole time. That's what we use. We have to record you.
Yeah.
And
so that was hopefully eye-opening for her.
Exactly.
At some point, I'm sure it was embarrassing, but hopefully it opened her eyes.
Probably one of the people that sued.
Yeah.
She got embarrassed.
Probably is.
But I don't know how we ended up on
the placebo thing.
The placebo thing, yeah. So this wasn't necessarily about James Randi himself, but just that idea of him being the guy who busts these, these, like you said, these people that give false hope, saying they're psychic, or they can talk to your dead loved ones, or even somebody like Uri Geller who's making money off magical powers. I'm air quoting as I usually do here on the podcast. Psychic powers to bend metal. Again, he's a little bit different class because he was strictly an entertainment. He didn't claim to, he wasn't solving people's, personal problems. He wasn't dealing with illness, but still was lying about it. And that's one thing now, being into magic. If I still enjoy Penn and Teller, like Penn and Teller Fool Us,
yes,
and all their shows, and they have always been big supporters of people like James Randi. I think, matter of fact, he was probably a big influence on them. They can't stand these people who claim real power.
That's right.
Real magic. So they're very, very hypocritical, these people.
Yeah, that's a
I'm
good
sorry,
show
not
to watch.
hypocritical,
By the way,
Yes.
Penn and Teller.
Fool us.
Fool us. And you get a trophy if you do that's a big F you.
Yeah, it says F you, fool us
Fool
on
us.
it. But that actually just came back on. It's been on for like a year. But they strictly do it because they're old school magicians and they want to be entertained.
Well,
and that's all they do it for.
Not to steer this in any crazy direction, but you mentioned mass delusion earlier.
Mm-hmm.
And that made me think of some of these other things I've watched where these chi masters or whatever.
Oh, Lord, yes.
And their pupils, they where they'll be like I can just touch you and knock you out, and then all of a sudden they're knocking out all their big students and everything so easily, but then when the camera crew says knock me out,
exactly, when Nat Geo shows up,
Nat Geo,
they can't, all of a sudden they can't do it.
Well, if you hold this one toe up this time and I do it, it won't work. And then next time I do it, if I raise the other toe up, it won't do it either. So I mean,
yes. So they'll tell you you're not receptive, or you were doing something with some kind of thing to one chakra.
Yeah.
And that's why it didn't work.
Non-believed is what he said. But,
yes. So and that was another thing.
So I thought about the pupils when you said mass delusion.
Yeah, the whole damn bullshito. I went to, because I've been in martial arts for many years until the last few. But that was one thing I went down to, is that rabbit hole many times of fake martial arts and chi and the whole bullshit thing. Because you hear about it when you study Eastern martial arts and then you get into culture and philosophy, that comes up, obviously.
Yeah.
And so, you think, okay, that's kind of cool. And then you realize, wait a minute, what? And then you get into it and the science behind it. There's no science behind it, which is exactly what that means. And then you see it leads to, this guy's got the knockout punch without touching you. And it's just like, how is this group of students so complicit and they just throw themselves on the floor believing this dude?
Right.
When a camera crew comes in there, or a modern-day MMA guy, and says, okay, I'll volunteer, knock me out.
Yes.
Never works. But this guy, the guy you're talking about, I forgot his name, he was knocking down lines of people. He was doing it through, like, cloths where he couldn't see them. Just all kinds of crazy shit. Ralph something. His name is Ralph something.
Oh,
I believe.
He's the one that trained Ali back in the 70s.
Yes.
And got popular.
He started as
a
karate champion.
Uh-huh.
And then he became this, dim mock death touch dude. And made a lot of money, I'm sure, before they started busting him on TV.
But I want to say this, and I heard this story, so it's not like I've seen this video or read this article or anything. This was literally a story that was told to me. If you're the one that told it to me, stop me and then you tell it. But
Okay.
if not, I'll finish it, okay? It was talking about that somehow science had proven that prayer works accidentally.
Yes, I think I did tell you that.
About the sensor that was put in different big cities around the world?
Yes.
Okay, go ahead. You go
And
ahead.
I don't
then.
know.
If you
I don't,
told it to me.
I don't
then-
remember the details, so I may not be able to tell it much better than you. But basically, and I can't remember what I was watching, but it was something to where they put some kind of. And again, you always question the electronics.
You
so
do.
I'm not saying this is legit. I'm just saying
It's
this
like
is,
ghost hunters and their electronics.
Exactly. Like, what the hell does that mean? What is,
Yeah.
because the needle moves, what is the EMF reading? Whatever.
Yes. But still, this is a pretty cool story.
Yeah,
though.
so something about, and it's really quick actually, it's when there was a mass something event, like let's say 9/11,
Yes.
where there were a lot of religious people praying or whatever, this needle or this machine would pick up something.
Right.
Now, I can't say what that something is, whether it's
it was
bullshit or not.
Like it was designed because, like you said, it would like pick up almost somebody's aura or spirit as they walked by it or something like that. Is that correct? That's how I heard it. That's
don't
the reason for the
remember
machine,
that.
or somehow that it would pick up an aura or something, and they put these things out to test it in different places, and then 9/11 happens. Boom. and they get the highest readings they've ever gotten across the globe, and they think it was because everybody was praying or something
Right.
at that very moment together.
Yeah, I don't remember the aura thing or like how the machine worked or whatever.
Right.
Because that reminds me.
It makes me want to research.
When you say that, that reminds me of Scientology and their bullshit.
Uh-huh.
You know. That's another rabbit hole you can go down about bullshit and brainwashing and mass delusion. Is these, Scientologists and their machines
Getting clear.
Level 26 on the way to 27. Anyway, so yeah,
but there's something there. There's some kind of story there that
I can't remember the details of it. I just remember there was something that like it seems like I remember, and I could be completely wrong, that nothing had ever happened before until a mass event like that, and then it got picked up.
correct. The needle had never moved or something.
Yes, and until there was a mass prayer event or something like that.
And then all across the globe, they started getting readings on those things all of a sudden.
Right.
So, again, I just wanted to start with that story to say that I do believe there are little things like, do you remember the Time Life book series that came out? And the commercial for it was, a woman is washing her dishes 1,000 miles away. Her daughter is in a car wreck.
Yes.
The mother feels something in her chest.
Yes.
Okay, I've always believed something like that. That there's this kind of bond there or something. So
you hear about that in twins.
One with the other. Twins, correct.
Yeah, you hear about that in twins a lot.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, and we were talking about this before we started too a minute. It was like, now with the spoon bending and telekinesis and all that, I don't know. I mean, I just have to say I'm basically agnostic when it comes to this kind of shit, because you can't really not prove it, right? But it's certainly been disproven a lot as far as some of these things like James Randi and psychics and mediums and all that stuff. But there could be something there, and I'll give my quick little story I've told you. Is in my martial arts days, I trained with a gentleman named Stephen K. Hayes, who lives in Ohio. If you in the martial arts world, you probably at least know his name.
You've definitely seen him on Black Belt magazine covers and stuff like that.
Exactly. He was black belt. He's been in like their top whatever martial artists, influencers, whatever. Been on the cover 1 billion times. The first American, not the first American to go, but the first American to go and live in Japan for 6 years and train under Hatsumi Sensei, which was the Ninjutsu Grandmaster under all these. He's the Soke or headmaster of all these individual schools of samurai and ninja schools, etc. And there's a lot of, I'm not getting into all of that because there's a lot of people that question even some of that. But the point being that he was the first. So a long time, the point is he started back in 1975 when I was born. This guy had taken local martial arts and he was looking for something more and ended up in Japan. They accepted him as a student and to this little secret ninja club. Essentially, he was the only American, and they really only accepted him because he was the big guy they could beat up on and test things on.
Sure.
And first, but he stayed, and they never expected him to stay. So anyway, so I go up. I've trained all these years up in Chapel Hill, had my own school for several years, etc. Got my black belt from him, my second degree and third degree from him, because you can't get it from anybody else at the time. Well, you can now. At the time, you couldn't. So then we go up to what's called Mountain Quest, and this is a local thing here in North Carolina. There's a piece of private land that one of my teachers owned, and it's called Shin Togakure, which means heart of Togakure, and the original Togakure mountain was in Old Iga, Japan. So the mountain was literally the same elevation, the same foliage and all that stuff as Japan. Cool. So they called it the heart of Togakure. So it became this, kind of cool place to go. It's a weekend seminar, but it's the place to go get your black belt, because when you get a black belt in this martial art, you don't just do kata.
Right.
You actually fight. Okay. You fight a lot of people at one time, one at a time. But sometimes you can get 2 or 3 grabbing you, whatever.
Yes.
But there's different teams. Some have weapons, some don't. Some are. It's just no holds barred.
It's like lights out at Cell Block D.
It is, and literally the lights are out because you do it at dusk and it gets dark.
Oh, no shit.
So there's a couple lanterns. That's about all you have.
That's cool.
So that's a big thing. So and so I've been through that. So anyway, when I got my first degree black belt, we then went up to the house they have there, big, huge, giant house with a theater room or whatever. And because I mean, this guy was a doctor, but my first teacher was a doctor, so a cardiologist who's pretty famous as well.
Inventions, patents,
exactly. So he had money, huge, giant house. I mean, there was I can tell you in this in this log cabin on top of the mountain, there was a Viking actual I don't know what you call it, from a Viking ship, the big piece of wood, the beam essentially. With those carvings on it that he had built in this house. That's how much money we're talking about. Anyway, just to give you a little backstory, that was my teacher. And so I'm up there probably in 2008. And this is after I'd started my school, and you have to go up there to get your license to teach and give out ranks and all that stuff. But they have this yearly seminar in Ohio called Fall Festival. So the owners and school owners go up there. You can go up there early, and you have an owners meeting and stuff like that, right? And then personal training, right? Black belt training, really high level shit. And you all get together with the other big owners of the schools and the big guys, way up in rank and all that stuff. And you have a whole day of training with just those guys, right? And Stephen Hayes. And so we're doing a sword kata, or he's showing a sword kata. And it's just looks really simple. It's just like an unarmed. It was basically, old school samurai versus an unarmed guy.
Right.
So you don't have anything, but there's a samurai fixing to cut you down. And he's doing this cut from above his head. It's straight. He's in a posture. I won't get into all the Japanese, but he's basically cutting straight down. It would cut you in half, right? I mean, it would split you from neck to balls.
Like the mountain.
Yeah, exactly. So he starts off, he says, okay, you got your basic techniques, and he gets really low, and it's really classical. This is not modern stuff, so it's not supposed to be
exactly
this particular thing. I mean, it's very modern, the art, but this is the old school stuff it's based off of. So I want to make that clear. It's not like we're training to fight samurai in the streets with swords.
Exactly.
Anyway, so you start off with the basics where you're kind of like you're there. He gets really low, and he's got nothing in his hands. My training partner Robert cuts down at him, and he just simply moves essentially. So essentially, he just turns.
So he can't see your training partner swinging at him.
No, he can. He can.
Okay.
He's right in front of him. Yeah.
Okay.
So it's pretty straightforward, right? So the first time he's like, this is kind of, level 1, low level. You would just basically, move at the right time. It's all about space and timing. And so basically he moves half his body and don't have to move as far. And that's the idea. And he just moves, basically turns. And the sword just goes right by him, right? So he misses him. And then he says, the next time you get into a little more psychological, and you start leading him. So he's leading him to the right, where he's kind of stepping off, sidestepping to the right really slow.
Uh-huh.
And the samurai's tracking him. And then as he swings, and of course he goes back left.
Yes.
And it's kind of like psychological. He led him over that direction, then he swings down and he steps back the other way. So it's more psychological, right?
Right.
And he's just showing this as an example. So we're, and we all knew this stuff. We had been through this stuff before. But then he pulls out, and he said, and then you can get a little deeper. And we don't know what's coming. And he's standing there, and he's like, he gets quiet. It's completely quiet. Robert's standing there. He gets back into Daijodan, which is the stance or posture he's in, right? It's the sword above his head, ready to cut down. These are foam training swords. I mean,
right.
Obviously we do use Bakken wood swords and stuff too, but foam training sword. And he basically gets really quiet. He stands there. He doesn't move. Robert swings down and completely misses him. And when this happens, we're all sitting around, in Seizo, which is just on your knees, around watching so everybody can see behind us and stuff. There's like a group of people in this one dojo.
So he didn't dodge.
Robert missed.
Oh, wow.
And
directly in front of him.
Robert went to the left like he was aiming to the left, and it was really, really odd. I'm like, what the fuck was that?
Yeah.
But while it happened, we all felt something.
Right.
In this room.
It was like
I don't know if you would call it energy. I mean, I don't even know, because I'm the skeptic here.
I know.
But there was something really, really odd that happened. And Robert literally looked dazed and confused. And he stood up and then he smiled and put his hand on Robert's shoulder and said, "I'll tell you what happened later."
Wow.
We all just sit there and watch this. And Robert was like, I'm making this face like people can see me. But he was like, what just happened? You didn't move. He didn't move. But he made Robert miss somehow. And I'm telling you right now, I mean, there's just no denying that I felt something.
Right.
Everybody in that room was like, it was a gas. It was like,
and
you know what I mean? And I know Robert. Like, I know him. I've known him for since we started training at the same time.
Yeah.
In Charlotte, as a matter of fact, and
that he would have hit him if he could.
They didn't set this up. Yeah, that's the way we train. We train purposely. That, as a matter of fact, that's a big point. It's called. You don't train where you would miss somebody because they would not have to actually defend that. Then they can't pick up on that sixth sense, as we call it.
It's not helping them at all.
Right. It's not actually helping you, and you actually don't have to defend if they're not going to hit you.
Right.
So you train realistically. That's the kind of the point in this martial art. That's what separates it from people training for trophies.
Yes.
And, that type of thing. It's really actual self-defense. Anyway, so that was really odd. It was like one of those things where what the hell just happened moment. Everybody in the room's gasping. Robert's confused. He's the only one who knows what the hell happened. And so I can't say that I don't know what it was. I don't know what he did. Now there's something called the Kujikiri, and it's a big ancient Shinto Japanese thing that gets into a lot of separate powers. But the cool thing about that is there's scientific stuff behind it too, because in his old books he would explain that this is not some magic. But there's been more recently, I guess, scientific discoveries about how this stuff works. So, like, for example, the first power is just more like getting pumped up. If you ever been in a fight, or if you're ever fixing to go out on stage or something big, you kind of pump yourself up, or like you're fixing to have a game.
Right.
It would be
first kiss.
Exactly. It would be like, for example, in my case, it'd be no different from me going up on the basketball court and then cranking Metallica in a layup line. Yeah, that's pumping you up, right? Yep. But it gets very, very deep, and that is one of those levels that he showed us essentially. So there's something there, but he claims there's scientific stuff behind it. So it's not saying it's like magic-y. We haven't used that word in a long time. But anyway, so yeah, there's something there. But again, I don't know what it is. So you can't completely discount that there's not some mystical shit out here. Is all I'm saying.
And we've heard our whole lives that we only use such a small fraction of our brain, and that is a powerful computer up there.
Yeah. And it reminds me of the movie I watched the other night, which I ended up had seen a long time ago, Unlimited, I think it's called, where this guy takes these pills.
I love that movie.
Yeah. And all of a sudden it opens up all these synapses and shit.
And the whole time you're going, I wish I could take one of those.
I know,
wish I could take one.
Till you find out what it does to you. But
wow, though.
Yeah, so that's where, but it goes back to what people call pseudoscience and stuff these days, and even goes to homeopathic, medicine and stuff. It's like there's some things to it. There's absolutely some things to it, but everything is not. But then, of course, in America, everything becomes a fad, and people exploit it, and it's all bullshit most of the time. But again, being the skeptic here, all I'm saying is I can't completely discount that there's not something out there that we're not tapped into, but I would probably say that there is a scientific explanation behind it. We just haven't got there yet.
And the one thing you pointed out earlier with twins,
that's
gone back generation after before generation, that, before trickery with electronics and things like that. I mean, and they couldn't measure certain things, but these twins, they do have a connection. The finishing each other's sentences and all that stuff. And once they grow up and move away from each other, then they say, they go to a birthday party and they're both wearing the same thing, basically. It's weird. There's something weird there.
Yeah, I think, like I said, I think there's a lot of ways to explain most of that, but some things you just can't. And you have to say, all right, there's a possibility. So that's what I would say when it comes to, all these supposed powers, whether you call it psychic or whatever, there may be something to it. I can't discount it completely. So I just label myself agnostic. I can't prove it completely.
There you go.
And anyway, I just thought it was it's just interesting stuff to me. So I know this has been a little all over the place, but it all kind of fit.
It does.
I think it does
too. I really do.
Starting off with James Randi, ending up with martial arts and chakras and chi. This bullshit chi. And what else did we cover? Fucking illness, mold illness.
Yeah, Lyme disease.
Lyme disease. Exactly.
You know what you're in for when you click this podcast.
That's right. That's right. But no, it's really interesting stuff, and I end up in those rabbit holes all the time, and that's what made me start doing the reaction stuff. Because when it comes to, like right now, I'm doing the TV shows, right? But I can react to anything. It can be a meme, it could be a video, music, one of these offhand videos, like we go in these rabbit holes.
That would be fun. That would be so easy because that's what we do.
It's what I do every day.
We react to it. We're like, have you seen this?
Exactly. We just don't record it all.
That's right. Another cool thing that I was thinking as we were doing this particular podcast is these are our friends, and we're just turning them on to different shows and little documentaries we've watched. I totally recommend watching the James Randi documentary, whether you know who he is or not.
Exactly. Yeah, totally. You don't have to like magic. You don't have to be into magic or being a magician. Right. It's not about that at all. It's about using his skill set to bust people who are using the same skill set and taking advantage of people. Yeah.
And I also recommend that Netflix documentary. What did you call it?
Afflicted. Yes, absolutely.
Yes.
It's all in the same vein, I think. So that's why we say we're all over the place, but not really.
No.
It's all in the same vein of,
is there.
What is there mass delusion, the placebo effect, and all these things. Mm-hmm. I mean, we could have got tricked up there during that thing, all of us somehow. I don't know how.
Right.
But something happened, So, I mean, I can't say it was all bullshit until I find out it is. But anyway,
I've enjoyed it.
Very cool stuff. Let's say really quickly, did we want to do the next podcast, the Ask Us Anything?
I would love to.
Let's do that.
Let's do it.
So, yes, in the comments on YouTube.
Yes.
And if you're listening to this on other platforms, feel free to subscribe to the channel on YouTube and leave us comments there. That's where we get the comments from.
Yes.
Ask us anything.
Ask away.
Anything personal. I mean, obviously, they'll,
Yeah, you'll find out if we'll answer it or not.
Yeah, I mean, we can't go into some things, obviously.
That's right.
But, I mean, most things I think we're pretty open about. But, ask us anything. Anything about anything. And actually, specifically say if you want it for me or James or both.
That's right.
Yeah, so
there you go.
We'll know who it's directed towards. So we'll have fun with that. So
I think so. I've been looking forward to that ever since we mentioned it.
Me too. Get to know each other a little better. I mean, they know we're insane from live streams for the last 2.5 years or something. But just whatever. I think it'd be fun to go through, and we'll read your comments and answer those next Tuesday, and that'll be released Wednesday. I think
good.
Probably Patreon on Tuesday night or whatever, or Patreon Wednesday. Maybe we'll start doing Patreon early.
Yeah.
And then Thursdays for the public or something. Something like that.
Yeah.
Either way, it's going to be once a week. Leave us comments, and we will answer those next week. We are back on a regular schedule. Real quick update on the new studio. We're still waiting. We're still waiting on approval so I can move.
But there are other houses being built.
There's something happening, but damn it, mine's not. So we're waiting on the city to approve little minor things for I guess it's the layout of the little neighborhood. It's just minor things that they keep changing, and damn, they're taking their sweet time. But this new house has a studio room, and I can't wait to actually see it and have it going. Also, as usual, this is available on other platforms: SoundCloud, Google Play, iTunes, Podbean, Spotify, and what's the other one? I think I said SoundCloud. I think that was
you
it.
did.
And obviously YouTube. So anyway, if you listen on those, feel free to give us a little rating. That would help out a lot.
Please do.
And we'll see you next week and answer your questions about whatever. Let you guys find out more about us if you even care. I don't know would they care. I don't know. We may get like 3 questions.
We believe in crop circles.
we may get
ask us anything.
Exactly. We may get 3 questions and be done. It'd be a quick podcast.
I like potted meat.
I do too. I hadn't had that in a long time, and I don't even want to know what's in it. I don't care.
Don't either. No.
I just put it on a cracker. Shut the fuck up.
That's right. Please don't tell me what's in it.